Today on the show, we have special guest Suzanne Dibble, who is an award winning attorney whose former clients include Richard Branson, Simon Woodruff, as well as many other famous entrepreneurs. She's a best selling author of GDPR for Dummies and has helped many multiple small business owners and charities. Suzanne, welcome to the New Mid.
Thank you for having me. And I must just explain my lockdown look here. Homeschooling two kiddies and juggling, just trying to get a bit of exercise in between everything else. And that's what we've just been doing. We've just been doing some exercise in the gym and then taking the dog for a walk. So excuse my lockdown look, as I'm now referring to it as.
No problem. Well, that's great that you're getting the exercise in because I know we're all cooped up, and that's a great way to relieve stress.
It's been a lifesaver, to be honest. We used to have a personal trainer that came to the house 3 times a week, but obviously with COVID and lockdown, that had to stop. So now we do it on Zoom 3 times a week still. And my husband joins in as well. And that has, well, it saved my personal trainer's business because at first she really saw a drop in her number of clients and her income. But for us, it's just, with juggling everything that we do, it's saved our sanity. So yeah, absolutely. Exercise has just been so beneficial for us throughout these difficult times.
Well, Suzanne, for us in America, you have a funny accent. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, well, in terms of my funny accent, I come from a place called Warrington, which is halfway between Manchester and Liverpool. So people who are familiar with football will have heard of Manchester United. I've travelled extensively around the world, and wherever I go, everybody has always heard of Manchester United.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in the northwest of this country, but I now live just south of London, so just outside London at the moment. But I get teased by my children and other people as well, my friends that know that they can joke with me, because I still say grass. Okay, so the difference between a northern accent, you would say grass and bath, and a southern accent in England, you say grass and bath. So
That's great.
The flat A and the long A, and that's generally how you can distinguish where people are from. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, my husband's a huge Manchester United fan. He was born in Manchester, so they have that in common. So you're a trained lawyer. Is that how you first got started in business?
Yes. Yeah. So I went to a private school where the career options were somewhat limited in terms of it was just, I think back then it was just a lot more, there weren't as many options, it was a much narrower frame of view back then. And if you were good at science, you were going to be a doctor. And if you weren't good at science, you were going to be a lawyer. And needless to say, I wasn't good at science and hence was sort of channeled into the lawyer route. And so I did the usual. I went to university, I studied law, I went to law school. I got my training contract with the world's largest law firm, and I became a mergers and acquisitions lawyer in the which is one of the most high pressure jobs you can have, really. You're working, regular 18-hour days. You're doing multi-million pound cross-border transactions, types of deals that you would read about on the front pages of the financial newspapers. And I was really thrown in the deep end. At the age of 22, 23, I was negotiating by myself against a room full of middle-aged men. So a great learning experience. And as part of that, I worked very closely with Richard Branson, which probably triggered my entrepreneurial desires, I have to say, having experienced working with him and the Virgin Group, because at the time, the Virgin Group had businesses in pretty much every area. Even hot air balloons, nightclubs, festivals, obviously the airline, drinks, cosmetics, fitness clubs, you name it. There was about 30 different consumer-facing companies in these different sectors. And it also had a venture capital arm where obviously people would regularly get in touch with Richard and say, oh, I love the Virgin brand and what it's all about. Will you partner with me on my new business idea? And he had so many of these emails that they actually had a whole department for reviewing those ideas, and many of them were taken forward. And that's why he had such an extensive portfolio of companies. And I was very involved in that particular department, and that really excited in me the potentiality of running my own business. So it was a few more years until that came about. I went and worked at ITV, our major broadcaster here in the UK, and negotiated £1 billion deal for them when I was only 33, which was fantastic experience. In fact, I think I was only 31 then. And then I moved to be a board director of a very large company, aged 33. And as a result, was listed in the who's who of Britain's business elite. So again, I was sort of progressing more from being just a lawyer to becoming more of that business person. Because when I was a board director, obviously I had much more of a commercial insight. It wasn't just all about the legals, it was about the whole business, the strategy of the business. So after that role, I found myself pregnant, very happily pregnant. And I thought, well, you know, I want to carry on my career, but equally I want to have it on my terms. I didn't want to have to hire a nanny and be tied to the office and not see my children. And so I decided at that point to set up my own business. So I actually set up my own legal practice whilst I was pregnant with my first child, which, you know, some people might call that crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot.
but actually, you know, it was fine. It kept me occupied. And that's what I needed personally was, yes, I love being a mum, but I needed to retain my sense of self and have my, you know, my intellectual stimulus there and not just be a mum. So for me, it was perfect because I could do as little or as much as I wanted completely on my own terms. And it was very funny actually, because when I was thinking of setting up my own business, I thought, right, what can I do? And I really wanted to get away from the law. I did not want to stay involved in the law. And I came to the swift conclusion that I didn't really know anything about anything else. So I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to have to. And of course, the easiest thing was to set up my own legal consultancy. So I started out, I did the traditional networking. I went to all the local network meetings. I met lots of mums who were like me, who'd left their corporate jobs to set up their own businesses to work around their families. So I created a brand called Lawyers for Mumpreneurs, or Mumpreneurs, you might say. Terrible name, but it did what it said on the tin. And I very quickly became the go-to lawyer for those people, you know, the mums who'd left corporates. To such an extent, actually, that I was working the same number of hours as I had been when I was doing M&A in the city. I thought, this is crazy. You know, I was up till 2 a.m. working with a 4-month-old baby. You know?
I was going to say, yeah, because you have an infant and you're starting your own business. Yeah, and now you're slammed.
Exactly. And I was earning significantly less money because I wasn't you know, I was charging affordable rates and wasn't getting paid my huge corporate salary that I had been doing. So I thought, well, something's got to shift here, because that was not what I signed up for. I wanted the freedom and I wanted to be able to do what I wanted with my kids. And so probably in about 2011, so only a year in really, I thought, well, I wanted to help more people. I was getting, you know, I'd already reached the sort of time for money income ceiling at that point, and I wanted to help more people. I was having to turn them away. And I thought, well, I can either hire a lot more lawyers to help me, which I really didn't want to do because I don't actually like many lawyers, don't tell anyone. and at the same time, I was getting really interested in digital marketing. I'd been on quite a few courses, I'd been to some conferences, and it really excited me. So I thought, right, what I could do is productize my expertise and take that online. And then I can help a lot more people. Once it's all automated, I can earn money while I sleep. You know, who doesn't like the sound of that? And so I created my Small Business Legal Academy, which is a legal platform for small business owners, online small business owners, where they can access all the templates that they need, contracts that they need to put in place, online disclaimers, all their copyright notices, all their, you know, how to trademark their name, how to protect themselves legally, how to deal with suppliers, how to take on employees, everything that they needed to know about the law and how to protect themselves and how to put all the contracts in place so that they could, you know, look professional when they're going out to clients. Because what I'd observed is that at the time, small business owners had two options. They could either go and pay a lawyer an expensive hourly fee, which many people perceive that they couldn't afford to do when they were starting out, or a small business. And then on the other side, there was template sites springing up, but they were, in my view, very risky because you didn't know who drafted them. It might not have even been a lawyer. I looked at some at that point and they were dreadful. And they didn't have anything around them to tell you what to do with them, which ones to use in what circumstances, and what else you needed to do, as well as put that template in place. So I wanted to provide this hybrid where I could still provide a one-to-many service and help more people, but there was a lot of hand-holding that went on as well. So I incorporated an 8-week online course that guides people through the types of legal issues that they need to consider, and then directs them to all the different resources in the Legal Academy. And that's been, you know, the best thing I've ever done, really. And even though, again, at the time, crazy I know, my second child was 4 months old at that point when I decided to create it. I sold it before I created it. I did a webinar, and I thought, well, if nobody wants it, there's no point spending ages on creating this massive thing, so I'll sell it first. And so I had about only maybe 150 people on this webinar, and I put the proposal to them. I gave them an amazing deal. I said, you know, it's like £100 for lifetime access, and you know, probably about 75% of the people on that call signed up to it. And I thought, wow, well, that's great because, you know, people want this. But then I actually had to you know, do the work.
You had to do it.
and my baby at the time, she was breastfeeding twice a night. You know, I think I got about 2 hours sleep a night for those 8 weeks that I was creating that course and the content that went around it. So it was probably the hardest that I'd ever worked, up to the point when the year before last, I wrote my book, but probably the hardest I'd ever worked. But so pleased now that I've done it because, you know, it's made me millions. It's helped so many small business owners. We've won a Law Society award. Pretty much everybody who does it recommends it to their, you know, their peers. And it's just provided me with such stimulus and challenge and reward over these years. So I'm so pleased. It's funny the way life turns out, isn't it? Because I would never have thought this would be the path that I've gone down. But here we are, and I'm loving it.
Well, it's so inspiring. You found a gap, you found a need that was out there, and you sort of put it out in the universe, and it responded twofold. I mean, wow, that's incredible. So it's funny. I was going to ask you, since you were some pretty famous entrepreneurs, what were some of the traits that you thought made them successful? But even yourself, what would you say, you know, some of your best traits?
Well, certainly working with Richard Branson, that was a real eye-opener in terms of what makes a successful business person. And what I observed from him was that I'd say that the one that is responsible for his success is he is incredible at identifying the right people for the right roles, and then he leaves them to get on with it. I mean, if everybody could do that in their businesses, we would all be multi-millionaires, billionaires, because that's the key to it. He's just got this insane people skills that not only obviously draw people to him, but you know, everybody working in those organizations was so loyal to him. The culture there was something that I hadn't experienced anywhere else. And I think if you can, as an entrepreneur, have that team around you and identify those right people and trust them to do the job, but inspire that loyalty and have that culture in place, then that is absolutely the recipe for success. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because I am a bit of a micromanager, and that's something that I've really struggled with in terms of delegation, and even to an extent finding the right people. And you know, as you go through business, I think you get better at that. But you know, I've looked back over the course of my business, and hires have been instrumental in whether the business has got stuck or whether the business has moved on. And I think that is vital. In fact, I was at a talk, I I went to the States actually to now it was a camp in the I'm going to say the mountain range wrong, near the
Appalachian?
I think that's
The
right.
Appalachian Trail?
Just outside of New York. Does that sound
Oh,
about
okay.
right? Yeah. And anyway, an entrepreneur conference, and there's a chap there, and he was saying that and he runs a multi-million pound sort of software tech business, and he says his only job is identifying the A-team players and keeping them close to him, so that when he's got an opening in his company, he's on the phone to those people he's identified. And he says, how about now making a move from wherever they're working at that time over to his company? And he said it was his sole job. And I thought, wow, and I buy into that, absolutely, because your team, totally make your business. And we're having a bit of a team restructuring at the moment, and it's I'm still not brilliant at it. I hold my hands up. I think I've still got a lot to learn in terms of the hiring, recruiting and onboarding process. I think that is absolutely where my focus is going to be for this year. And the other thing with Richard is, he was just so, everybody knows his brand raising efforts. He's dressed as an air hostess when he was battling with British Airways over the transatlantic routes. He's been off in his hot air balloons. He does all of his daredevil stunts. He's such a fantastic face of the brand. But what people, he really does live that. He's not one of these guys that is too self-important, and he's jovial as that sort of PR brand, but then when you're with him, he's a different person. So we went out for dinner in Chelsea, which is a really nice suburb of London, and there were only 4 of us. So it was an intimate dinner in a very nice restaurant, and there was probably only 30 people in this small restaurant. And by the end of the meal, so we had our nice meal, we were sort of on the men were on the brandies, and I don't know, I was on some kind of dessert wine or whatever. And there was a chap at the next door table said something to Richard, and Richard's, we had a laugh and a joke and whatever. And I kid you not, within the space of about half an hour, the entire 30 people in the restaurant had pulled up a seat around our table, and Richard was regaling them with stories of various bits of how he built the Virgin Empire, and that was a private night out, and he could have said, he could have cut them down and not engaged with those people, and he didn't, and he loved it, and he was so entertaining, and I think that is again the secret to his success, is that he's such a people person, and he lives the brand. So yes, it was. Little did I know at the time that most entrepreneurs would give their right arm to go for dinner with Richard Branson. To me then it was just this is pretty cool, going to a nice restaurant. But and now people pay, I don't know, $100,000. Right. People paying $100,000 to go for dinner with Richard Branson. Crazy.
Oh my gosh. I think people would pay $100,000 just to go out to dinner right now. Imagine, yes. You think, wow, 30 people in a room together, but he's so captivating. He's just, and I love what you say, he lives the brand. And that is great advice for us small business owners, because we have to live our brands. We are the face of our companies, especially when we're starting out. Do you have any other advice for small business owners when they're starting out? Do you have any really good 5 helpful tips or?
Yes. So I used to actually do business mentoring, and I had my own mastermind group, and I did love that. I really loved helping people with the business side of things. In the last couple of years, really since GDPR went crazy, and I've written my book on GDPR and had a lot to do with that. And I've not been running any mastermind groups or mentoring, but I do love giving business advice. And what I tend to find when people start their business is that they expect to be overnight successes, or they will suffer from comparitis, where they look at people's social media accounts or they look at their YouTube videos and they think, oh, I'm not as polished as Marie Forleo, for example. I can't possibly put any videos out there, or I can't possibly do this, or they expect that if they have a launch, they're going to make, do a multi-million-pound launch on their first launch because they've read stories about whoever has done that recently. And I always say, no, it's baby steps, and it takes many years to become an overnight success. And the way that I like to, when I'm feeling that sense of, oh, I'm not good enough, what makes me feel a lot better is when I scroll to the bottom of, the YouTube channel of, say, Marie Forleo, when she didn't have her production team all around her, and her videos were pretty bad, I can tell you. And it's very interesting to see how she's grown. And I actually met her at an internet marketing conference in the States back in 2012 or even 2011, when she was just starting out. And it's amazing. We had a chat at the bar, and it's just amazing how she's grown and how her brand has grown over the past 9 years. So I see a lot of people coming into the business and they want to be Marie Forleo tomorrow. No, it's taken her 9 years to get where she is,
That's true, because people do think like it just happened overnight. She had her successful book, Everything is Figure Outable. But I think that's her first book. And it literally took her 9 years to release her first book.
Yes. Yeah, I have it on my shelf, actually. I met her. She came over and did a book tour in the UK. I'm just trying to see. I don't think I can easily get it. But yeah, she had a book tour at a private members club that I'm a member of in the UK. And I went and said hi again to her. So yeah, I mean, she's done tremendously well. But even before the book, she'd been very successful with and everything else. So yeah, I think comparing to others is not very beneficial. I think the best thing to do when you're starting out is to get super clear on who do you want to help, what are you helping them with, and why are you the best person to help them. To really get familiar with those marketing basics, and then to have a plan, to stick to that plan consistently, and to stay in your lane and just carry on with that plan. And if you focus on those core, if you know who you're serving, you serve them well, and you do a good job, then your business will grow. And you don't need to be spending, certainly initially, you don't need to be spending hardly any time on social media. I mean, I think social media is just, there's too much focus on it right now. If you get your first few clients and focus on doing a fantastic job for them, they will tell their friends. And then you do a fantastic job for those next people, and they will tell their friends, So initially, that's, certainly in the first 6 months to a year. And I think there is a problem in that, everybody's, promoting these, get to your first million in 6 months or whatever it is. And no, if you can make 6 figures in 6 months or even 12 months, you're doing fantastically well, So I think if you focus on just doing the best job for your clients and getting word of mouth referrals, that's brilliant. And then once you've got that nailed, then you look at automating the marketing. And then you look at, different marketing channels. So little baby steps. I think people try to be all over.
Right.
All at once. And they don't have a marketing plan. They're very, very scattered.
Right. So be more focused.
Yeah, sorry, you cut out a bit then. So sorry if I was talking over you.
Oh, no, that's okay. It got a little electronic. That's okay. So you being focused in your purpose, in your marketing, and who you're helping is really key.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that's, like I say, that's what I see new businesses struggling with. They think that for their marketing, they have to be everywhere. And it's much better to focus on one channel, nail that channel, put automation in place for that channel, and then move on to another one, and then repeat, move on to another one, etc. So yeah, that's my top tips.
Great, thank you. It's funny, I read on your social media that you're a great negotiator. So what are your tips for negotiating?
Well, I think that particular social media post was talking about using silence effectively. Yeah. Which is one top tip. Absolutely. Most people can't cope with silence. So if you ask a question, or if you put your position down, you state your position, and then you're quiet. and you have to get used to uncomfortable silences, and then the other party will crack first. Absolutely. And I think most people will try to fill that gap, and they'll say, oh, well, you know, if that's not okay, then, you know, and you'll almost be compromising with yourself. So silence is definitely a good one. I think, you know, why I've been so successful is in negotiating, particularly at such a young age, is that I quickly develop rapport with people, and I use charm, I use humor, and I get people on side. And I am about the win-win, because I met a lot of lawyers who were very aggressive and who just wanted to win at all costs. And I don't think that's ever a good idea, but particularly if it's a contract where it's an ongoing relationship. You know, yes, you might screw a supplier down on costs, or you might negotiate a great deal, but if that person doesn't feel like it's a win-win, then that's not a great starting point for that ongoing relationship. So I think you've got to be really careful about winning at all costs. And then the other thing is, I'm never afraid to question anything. If I don't understand something, it's because the other person hasn't presented it clearly enough, or I've not been provided with enough information. So I question everything in a confident way, and I'll get to the bottom of the issue. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because they think it will make them look stupid, or you're laboring the point, or whatever. I've never thought that. I want to get to the bottom of whatever the question is in my mind, so that I understand the full position, so that we can move forwards.
Oh, I love that. That is awesome. So we were just talking before we came on that we both have younger kids, and we're dealing with COVID, and we're dealing with homeschooling.
And
There's a
lockdown
lot
hair.
lockdown hair. And
I've
you
not been to the
know,
hairdressers in about 9 months now. It's killing me.
right? I mean, that it's funny. It's COVID hair now. Like, everybody knows it. Um, how do you manage work-life balance for all of us midlife moms out there who are juggling it?
It's tough, isn't it? It really is. I had a full-time nanny. Fortunately for her, and we were very happy, but she became pregnant with her first child, and I tried to find a replacement, but she was incredible, and B, just the selection of nannies that the agency gave us, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just going to be cross every day. There's no point this person coming in and trying to help us, because it would just be worse than not having anybody. And then COVID struck. So since COVID has struck, we haven't continued the search, but having a full-time nanny was brilliant. And saying that, I wouldn't have wanted to have been working in the city still and having a full-time nanny, because then I would never have seen the kids. But I have my own home office, and whilst she was here, it totally freed up my mental space, because as mums, we are generally the ones who are keeping on top of all the school admin, and thinking about what we're going to have for dinner, and thinking about what day the dog goes to doggy daycare, and et cetera, et cetera. Whereas typically the man really only has to think about getting himself to work and back, typically. So that really helped free up some mental bandwidth. And obviously she dealt with all the logistics, getting the kids to school and back, cooking their tea, giving them breakfast, just the school admin that goes with that. And she also did a lot of PA tasks for me as well. So that was fantastic help. We also have a housekeeper who does all the cleaning and ironing and laundry and everything. So that was a super help as well. But now, I say, because of COVID, we don't have either of those positions filled, and it's a real struggle actually at the moment. So I'm just hoping that I'm dreaming about the days when COVID is a distant memory. My housekeeper is back, and I'm also going to hire a chef as well. So I want someone to come in, probably from 7 till midday every day, apart from the weekends, and that person will do probably housework, cooking, and probably housework and cooking at the moment. So yes, that's my plan. I'm lining up people as we speak for that. But it's all about, you've got to have that support, haven't you, really? And I don't think I've met any successful business person that is a woman that's got kids and a family where you haven't got that support in, because you just can't do it all.
Yeah, it is hard. It's hard juggling everything. And it's interesting because COVID has really sort of leveled the playing field. I mean, everybody's in it together. We're all dealing with this. And it's funny because, you've seen the Zooms where the kids are walking in the back, or the dog comes, or the cat walks through. I mean, it's just, we're sort of going through all of that together right now.
I
And
suppose what's good, though, is that people are very forgiving about it, aren't they? Because everybody's in the same boat. So yes, I've been on some trainings and the kids have come in screaming, and everybody is in the chat saying, don't worry, that's a regular occurrence in our household. So at least everybody understands it, and we can give each other a bit of slack when that does happen.
And it kind of makes you feel like we're all in this together too, and I don't know, it feels more real life to me. So, we have to give ourselves a break, I think, when it comes to the end of the day. We're doing the best we can. And,
Absolutely. I look at my house at the end of the day and it's such a mess. And I think, well, it's going to be a mess for a few more months until COVID's over and my housekeeper can come back. Yeah.
So I like to finish with two questions, all of my guests. One is, what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, actually, until recently, have been pretty terrible with money. I spent everything. So even though from a very early age, I was getting paid a very good salary, it was frittered on cocktails, expensive meals, taxis home, nice clothes, handbags, shoes, you name it. Now, had I understood how compound interest worked, like really understood it, then I would have made sure that I had put away, a reasonable proportion of that wage every year, and I didn't. So, I mean, I'm very lucky in that I have an investment property and things like that. But now, since I've got a great business pal called Anne Wilson. She calls herself the Wealth Chef. And she's got a fantastic book called The Wealth Chef. And she just presents wealth and finances in a very accessible way. I think it was just always too boring to me, or too complicated, or too whatever. I wasn't interested at all. And she's presented it in a way that, as I say, is very accessible. So I now have, I have my ISAs, I have my trackers, I have my little pot of shares that I play about with. And I've been really successful with that, actually, with my share dealing, much to my husband's annoyance. And so, yeah, that's probably one thing that I would say to my younger self is, if you even saving £100 a month, the benefit of compound interest, if you don't touch that pot, would have resulted to a very good nest egg. I'm sorry about the light here, by the way.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, we're on our final question. I'm sorry for you. Well, we're on our final question. So my last question for you is, if someone is wanting to get started, if they want to start their small business, but they just haven't done it, what would you suggest to them to get started?
It's so difficult, because if you feel beholden to that salary, because you need or whatever, then it's very hard to break away from that. And I was actually very lucky.
Can we start that just one more time?
Sure.
I've lost you. So if someone wanted to get started, what would you suggest for them?
Yes, it's often very hard for people to take that plunge, particularly when they've got a reasonably well-paying job, and if they've got to pay the mortgage or things like that, because it's a leap of faith, and you've got to fill that income gap very quickly. I was lucky when I set out, because we had my husband's salary, and that could cover the mortgage and the essentials whilst I built up my business. But I had a lot of friends who were lawyers, and they were by far the major breadwinner, and they felt that they couldn't take that risk. They couldn't have that income gap. So I was very lucky, and I know that does apply to a lot of other people, and it's a concern how they fill that income gap immediately. So I think that I personally would always take the plunge, because then you have no option but to make it work, and your brain will always find a way to make it work. I don't think there's any greater motivation to succeed if you have got your feet firmly held to that fire. Otherwise, other things to do are obviously keep your 9 to 5 and have that discipline to work on your new business in the evenings. But I find from my experience of helping people who've done that, it's a struggle to do that. I think my advice would be fully research your proposition, make sure you're really clear on those basics of who you're helping, how you're helping them, and why. You've got to be passionate about this. It's not something that you want to quit your job for and then 6 months later find that you don't like doing what you're doing. So you've got to have that passion for it as well. But once you're really clear on all that, then I personally would take the plunge, get a loan if you need to cover that period of expense, and really then just put everything that you have got into building that new business. I say, have a plan, keep on track, be consistent, do your very best for your clients, and you will find that before too long, you have a thriving business and you've easily plugged that income gap.
I love that. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Thank you for having me. And again, apologies if you're watching this on YouTube, apologies for the light streaming through, the lockdown hair and the clothes. I hope that the content has made up for that somewhat.
No, it's fantastic. Well, most people will be watching it on podcasts, so, or listening, I should say. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.